these videos a little bit better just because I feel like I'm learning more, and I kind of just like the sort of counting down format and going through multiple crime stories rather than just the one. But as always, any requests whatsoever for true crime stories or topics, themes that you'd like to see covered in a video, then be sure to let me know down below. But let's waste no time, let's get into the most insane prison escapes. According to the US Bureau of Justice Statistics, some 2,000 people escape from prison every year. But only a handful of prison escapes are truly legendary. Most people who escape prison do so while out on work detail or leave during an authorised furlough. They're usually caught within days, but others are far more elaborate. And while the crimes that put criminals in jail may not be anything to applaud, some of their prison escapes might just be. The variety of these prison escapes runs the gamut. From mile-long tunnels constructed directly beneath the prison, to con artists simply talking their way out. The prison escapes and jailbreaks below will have you rethink just how secure these facilities truly are. So we begin by going back to 1962. The 1962 Alcatraz prison escape. On the morning of June 12th, 1962, guards at Alcatraz Federal Penitentiary made a shocking discovery. Inmates Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin had escaped. Their daring caper baffled authorities since Alcatraz was over 1.25 miles off San Francisco's coast, and so heavily guarded that it was known as the Rock. Alcatraz had held prisoners since the Civil War. However, it was only re-fortified into the infamous prison in 1934, and came in handy by holding inmates like Al Capone during the peak of organised crime. With an armed guard at every outpost, new iron bars on every cell, and choppy waters offshore, escape seemed all but impossible. And between 1934 and 1962, there had already been 13 failed escape attempts. But that did not deter Morris and the Anglin brothers. The trio fled Alcatraz on June 11th, 1962, just a year before the prison would close for good. But their project began months earlier with Morris at the helm. A career burglar and armed robber, Morris was one of the smartest inmates in Alcatraz. Bringing the Anglins and car thief Fallon West into the fold, they stole spoons and saw blades and spent over half a year enlarging the ventilation ducts in each of their cells, with Morris playing his accordion to dampen the nightly noise. They covered the ducts with cardboard resembling the cell wall colour during the day. The ducts led to a utility tunnel where they stored a 6 by 14 feet inflatable raft made of raincoats they had accumulated. Most resourceful of all, they had created paper-mache dummy heads and left them poking out of their cell beds. When the time finally came, West was left behind when he failed to remove the grill of his ventilation duct. Oh, that's sad. All that work. In a twist of fate, it had simply become stuck. Morris and the Anglins meanwhile arrived at the utility tunnel and snuck to the shore to inflate the raft. While the FBI launched an investigation that concluded in 1979 that all 3 men had died, not everyone is as convinced, particularly the Anglin brothers' 2 sisters, who claimed in 2012 that Clarence had called them as a free man. Next up, we have the prison escape of Leonard Rain Moses. Leonard Rain Moses was only 16 years old when joined the 1968 Pittsburgh riots in wake of Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination. It was April 6th when he threw Molotov cocktails at the home of local Mary Amplo, who died of pneumonia caused by her burns a few months later. Moses was charged with first-degree murder. The jury of 8 women, 4 men deliberated for only an hour before finding the then 15-year-old Moses guilty. A judge sentenced him to life with no chance of parole. In desperate hopes to overturn that conviction, his lawyers managed to bring the case before the Pennsylvania Supreme Court in 1971. His lawyers argued that any confession Moses gave authorities should be suppressed. They explained that the teenager was far too young to decide to waive his Miranda warnings, let alone realise that he might have incriminated himself while speaking to police without an attorney following his arrest. Ultimately, Moses decided to take matters into his own hands. Despite the Supreme Court concluding that he did deserve a new trial, Moses opted not to take his chances and forewent a traditional prison escape by using a temporary leave to his advantage. When he was permitted to attend his grandmother's funeral, he vanished. On July 1st, 1971, Moses attended the service at Nazarene Baptist Church in the Homewood neighborhood of Pittsburgh, escorted by 2 police officers. But Moses managed to elude them and escape. A federal arrest warrant was issued on the 12th of July, but Moses remained a fugitive for the next 5 decades. The FBI had been aware that Moses likely lived under an alias, but only discovered that it was Paul Dickinson when he was locally arrested in Michigan. Working as a pharmacist, Moses was arrested for stealing 80 hydrocodone pills, with authorities easily matching his fingerprints to those from the 1968 arrest. Arrested by the FBI on November 12, 2020, Leonard Rain Moses had become one of the longest-running fugitives in US history. Fortunately for Moses, the US Supreme Court had already ruled in 2012 that sentencing a juvenile to life imprisonment without parole was tantamount to cruel and unusual punishment. Good work, 50 years, that is mad. Next up, we have still at large Lester Eubanks. In terms of prison escapes, Lester Eubanks followed in the footsteps of Leonard Ray Moses and used an authorised furlough to vanish, but their crimes were very different. In 1965, Eubanks essayed and murdered a 14-year-old girl named Mary Ellendina. Okay, this video just took a lovely dark turn, brilliant. With a litany of essays under his belt, Eubanks encountered Dina in an alley. The Mansfield, Ohio girl had merely run out of change while doing laundry when she departed the laundromat and ran into her killer. Dina tried to fight him off, but Eubanks ultimately shot her twice and bludgeoned her with a brick. The crime saw Eubanks convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to death on May 25, 1966. A model citizen during his first 7 years in prison, Eubanks was granted a holiday season furlough to shop at Ohio's Great Southern Shopping Center on December 7th, 1973. Then he disappeared into the night. Interesting to describe him as a model citizen. I wouldn't say model citizen, I'd say model prisoner. He gave up his rights to be a citizen by committing the two worst things a human can commit. Very odd wording. Although the Ohio Department of Corrections immediately listed him as a fugitive, federal authorities only began their search for Eubanks in earnest in the 1990s. It gained steam when Deputy U.S. Marshal David Seiler picked up the case in 2016. He suspected Eubanks lived under the alias of Victor Young. Fugitives on the run, as long as Eubanks, tend to use that time to change their appearance, use aliases, and even start new lives, said Seiler. He literally could be hiding in plain sight. This is why we're asking citizens to be vigilant and contact us with any information they believe will help us apprehend him. Promising leads about Eubanks have appeared over the years. Victor Young seemed to have lived in Los Angeles between 1975 and 96 and worked many jobs, including hospital janitor and waterbed factory employee. Ultimately, Lester Eubanks has never been caught. If alive, he is now in his 70s. That's just annoying, they're all criminals, obviously, but the worst one is the one that, has still never been caught. Right, I want a good escape. This one is titled Richard Lee McNairs Prison Escape by Mail. So Richard Lee McNair wasn't your traditional prison escapist. On the contrary, he used a brilliantly unorthodox method to regain his freedom and managed to mail himself out of jail. While the convicted murderer would ultimately be recaptured and secured in a max security facility, his ingenuity is one for the books. McNair was raised by a police officer and displayed a strong intellect as a child. However, he would use that savvy to rob a grain storage facility in North Dakota in November 1987. He shot two men who startled him in the process, one of whom died of their wounds. McNair was convicted of first-degree murder and attempted murder. The shootings earned McNair 2 life sentences, while a burglary charge added another 30 years to his sentence. McNair was desperate to escape his new concrete confines. Languishing in North Dakota State Penitentiary, he managed to escape through a ventilation pipe in 1992, but would be recaptured in 1993. However, his prison escape attempt on April 5, 2006, at a federal prison in Pollock, Louisiana, would cement McNair as a truly notable prison escapist. After building a makeshift compartment complete with a breathing tube and fitting himself inside it, he placed himself beside a mailbag pipe that was taken to a nearby warehouse with a forklift outside the prison. The heat was unbelievable, he said. The inside of the pod felt like a furnace. Sweat rolled off me, my head was swimming in the fog. I was afraid I would pass out. It was a tight fit. I couldn't wipe the sweat from my brow. It was running into my eyes, down my neck, dripping from the tip of my nose and everywhere else. Once the warehouse staff left for lunch, McNair bolted. Even when he was caught running down nearby railroad tracks by a police officer, he convinced the cop he wasn't the prison escapee authorities had been notified about. He remained at large until late 2007, when he was arrested for driving a stolen vehicle. Promptly reincarnated, languishes in a Colorado Supermax prison today, with high-profile inmates like Boston bomber Dzhokhar Tsarnaev and as his peers. It's unlikely McNairs will be able to fool his captors again. Nice. Okay, I know this guy's name. Next up we have John Dillinger's prison escape. That's John Dillinger if the Greek stopped you from hearing that. John Dillinger's name alone sparks imagery of Tommy guns, trench coats, and the heyday of organised crime. Born in Indianapolis in 1903, John would certainly earn that association during the Great Depression. Before he died in 1934, Dillinger had robbed 24 banks and been in prison several times, and once had ingeniously escaped. A high school dropout, Dillinger began his life of crime by shoplifting and stealing cars. He served in the Navy before being discharged and married a 16-year-old in 1924. Realising he couldn't provide for her, he robbed a store owner and served 9 years in prison. Divorced upon his release on May 10, 1933, Dillinger began robbing banks for a living. The 29-year-old formed a crew with Paul Barker, William Shaw and Noble Claycomb, and robbed upwards of $30,000 from various banks, before finally being arrested in Ohio. While Dillinger provided his men with a blueprint to escape and break him out, his most infamous jailbreak came in 1934. By shooting a prison guard and breaking Dillinger out of prison, the men had committed an interstate felony as soon as they crossed the border into Indiana. That led FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover to wield the agency at Dillinger, who was arrested in Tucson, Arizona in January 1934 and extradited to Crown Point, Indiana. "I know he's a bad baby and a jailbreaker, but I can handle him," said Sheriff Lillian Holly. Sheriff Holly was confident that Crown Point Jail would keep Dillinger behind bars, and even boasted that it was escape-proof. But, rather than await trial for the murder of a police officer, Dillinger spent his time whittling a wooden gun, which he used to fool the guards into opening his cell with on March 3, 1934. After grabbing 2 machine guns, he imprisoned the guards themselves and fled Crown Point in Sheriff Holly's car. With a nationwide manhunt in place as a result, Dillinger would be located and gunned down within months. Unfortunately for Sheriff Holly, the bank robber's death on July 22nd robbed him of revenge. And we're going to end this video with one more. Frank Abagnale Jr.'s prison gone. As chronicled in Steven Spielberg's 2002 film Catch Me If You Can, it's on my list, still never seen it. Frank Abagnale spent his youth and early adulthood as a check forger. He fooled Pan American Airlines into thinking him a pilot, spent years posing as a Brigham Young University professor, and cashed more than $2 million in bad checks. Ultimately captured in Montpellier, France in 1969, Abagnale spent 6 months in a regional prison and another 6 months in Sweden before being deported to the United States. He was sentenced to 12 years in the Federal Detention Center in Atlanta, Georgia. However, the natural-born conman would escape in 1971. The US Marshal who transported Abagnale to the facility had forgotten his detention commitment papers. This came at a time when civil rights groups and congressional committees heavily scrutinized prisons. Abagnale used the lack of official inmate documentation to his advantage. Realizing that the guards were already considering the possibility that he might be a prison inspector under contract by the FBI, receiving that card in his prison mail, he finally revealed himself as a prison inspector to the guards, who were delighted to find their suspicion confirmed. With the card in hand and enough trust fostered in the guards, Abagnale claimed he needed to meet with an associate outside the prison walls and needed to borrow a car. Once they provided him with one, he was gone. He was ultimately arrested in Washington, D.C. 2 months later and re-imprisoned for 4 years. While Abagnale's story was famously chronicled to Hollywood fanfare, journalist Alan C. Logan believes it's too unsubstantiated to hold up to scrutiny. However, others maintain that entities like the Federal Detention Center would prefer to have their slip-ups considered to be hoaxes, rather than admit to their incompetence. And that is gonna do it for tonight's video. Some very interesting and, frankly, genius ways people have broken out of prison. But that's the thing with criminals, they're so stupid but also so intelligent at the same time. A lot of them, although most of them are just plain stupid. If you'd like to see a part 2, I imagine there's plenty more amazing prison escape stories that I'd be happy to come back to and revisit. I'm aware the last couple of videos have been between the 20 and 25 minute mark, so if my memory serves me